Hello and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to decorate these crystals I got from a friend with some little animals. I'm not usually a huge crystal collector, but I think crystals are very pretty. I mean, depending on the crystal. But for these guys I really wanted them to display some tiny sculptures in the form of some critters. So for this one I decided to make a little lizard that will sit on top and, you know, kind of look on from it. It has this incline, the crystal has this incline where I think this lizard will sit perfectly on top. So I picked up my Sculpting medium and I just started sculpting. Now sadly for a decent bit of the video I apparently mastered the art to either be out of frame or struggle with autofocus, because this camera isn't very good at it. It can do a lot of different things, but autofocus sadly isn't one of the things that works that well. But I think I still captured a decent bit of it, enough to actually make a video out of it. Actually spent a decently long time on the sculpture too, since there were so many tiny details, so it was kind of really hard to keep focus and, you know, concentrate on not smushing anything, losing any details. So I actually started out with the body, which I just wrote a snake with different tapers basically, and then I started with the arms, which also were meaty snakes with different tapers. I didn't also separate it out to feet, and when I wanted to place it on the rock I decided it doesn't really fit, they're too big, so I just moved them to the back, used some bacon bond and blended them into the back, and yeah, assigned legs, they work perfectly fine. I'm going to define all the little hand or claw digits, I guess, later on when it's on the stone, because I want to position them a bit more, separately. But these are so thin that if I would do this right now, they would just probably rip off or something. So I'm just trying to separate them a little bit, and then finally work them a little bit more when this guy is on the crystal. Now of course we have hind legs, so we also need front legs. I started off with them fairly similar, just that this time I'm doing them very, very much smaller and then trying to separate out these fingers. Honestly, I'm always struggling a bit with any separate digits, fingers, toes, whatever, in these creatures, especially if it's this tiny, because it's so hard to get them actually round and not to look flat where I cut them. And this sculpture really was no exception, so I had to rework a lot of things after I placed it on the rock. To aid in these guys sticking, I'm actually also going to use bacon bond. Now I think liquid Fimo would have been a bit better, but bacon bond kind of worked. I just had to scratch off some of the excess of the stone later, because it kept pooling and leaving a little bit of a weird crust. But once I got rid of that excess, it actually worked out really well. As you can see, I really went and tried to position the legs or the feet a little bit more it was actually, trying to climb the stone and trying to hold on to it. And it was super tricky to get them even, so I actually spent about 20 something minutes just trying to get the hind and the front legs right, and all the digits kind of in place where I want them to be. And yeah, the front ones I decided to also shorten a bit, and then I had to kind of redo them, and it was just a lot of back and forth. But I think it worked out pretty well in the end. These are so small that I'm actually quite happy with them even turning out like this at all, because I was quite worried I'd have to redo any of the arms because of this. Now finishing the little toes means that we're actually onto the next sculpture, and for this crystal I'm going to make a little snake, or a danger noodle. I decided on a hognose since that's one of my favorite kinds of snake, so I just you know, made a wormy delay again with a lot of tapers, and then it was a decent bit of trouble to like get the nose right. Again, autofocus on this camera, not the greatest, so I'm sorry to say that, yeah, you guys will not really be able to see anything. And then I struggled a great bit with the eyes. This is such a tiny scale. Getting the right scale for the eyes without them looking too big or too small or out of place was so hard. Like for the other sculpture, I actually used my little silicone shapers to make the eyes and just like move a bit of clay around. But this guy will have like a bit more of a bulgy eye look to make it look a bit more adorable, so I struggled with that quite a bit, and then I went in with my tools to give him a little smile. And here you can see him before baking, and yeah, I struggled quite a bit with the smile, but I think it turned out really well. And then it was just time to carefully place them around this crystal. I was struggling again a little bit with the positioning because I didn't have any plan at first, but after like trying around a little bit, I finally found a position that I really liked, so I applied again some bacon bond and I shaped them, and then it was time for both of my sculptures to go into the oven. And after 20 minutes I got them out and it was time for painting. They got a little bit brown, but that's totally fine. It's because my oven is like a pizza style oven, like a smaller one, so the heating elements are a bit more exposed. But you know, there's a good trick to know if you overbaked your clay or not, which this one isn't overbaked, it just got a bit more toasted. And that is, if the clay is still flexible, then it's still fine. Like if you take it out of the oven and the clay has still a little bit of flexibility while it's still warm, of course, you know, you always need to be careful to not burn yourself, then it's usually fine, and you can like either like double bake it if you have to, if you're working on another sculpture, or you know, just be sure that it won't break. If it comes out of the oven and it's rock hard, then that is not good at all. It means that the clay can get very fragile all of a sudden. I had pieces shatter because of that, and I would not suggest you guys to put any of those pieces into the oven again. But you know, as I said, if it's flexible, it's totally fine, even if it gets a bit shading. And actually some clays, like I noticed that Sculpting Original, at the same time, even, you know, with the same piece, like you put like a chunk of Sculpting Original and the same size chunk of Sculpting Medium into the oven, the Sculpting Original will always get really dark while the Sculpting Medium will stay light. And I think that is just how the clay is composed. Which, you know, again, if it's flexible, totally fine. And this one definitely was, so I was happy to go into painting. Started out with a brown base coat, shaded it lightly with like a lighter, like more leathery brown. And then I went in with my dotting tool and added some dotted lines for this lizard. I actually went in and used some references, but this color scheme is not 100% accurate at all. So I just wanted to make sure that it kind of looks realistically lizard, but it doesn't have to be like 100% accurate or anything. And then I actually shaded everything with like a darker black but in a thinner coat before going in with a dark green, followed by a light green, and then I blended everything in towards the tail with the brown again before adding the black back onto the little black like line in the back, and of course on the eyes. And then I also added its lighter belly. Notice that decent bit of lizards definitely have a lighter belly, so I wanted to give this guy one too. Now for a little noodle, I had to first clean up all the bacon bond. I think this crystal is like coated with probably like some silver or something, which, you know, gives it this like blue sheen. And it like also makes the bacon bond not stick at all. The other crystal had a bit more texture. This one also has like tiny grooves. It's like not perfectly smooth, so I hoped it worked. But it came right off, which honestly, since our noodle here held its position, it's actually quite perfect, because that means I can paint it without having to worry about anything, and since the crystal is actually see-through, that means I can paint the all the sides of the snake without having to worry about anything like gray showing through. So I went in with the sandy color and added some dots. Again, just taking pattern inspirations, but not really like too much of an accurate thing. I did choose some like more vibrant orangey colors, since those are usually my favorite type of hognose colors. I really like this kind of vibrant yellowy orange tone. And I just went in with the dotting tool, trying to like make a decently even pattern on all sides and all around. And I'm going to fill this in with like a bit of a lighter tone, just to give the little like pattern dots a little bit more of variation, because I noticed like a decent bit of the patterns that have like dots have like darker outlines. Like even the like normal common hognose snake that I've seen, they always have like these darker rings around the spot, so that's kind of what I'm trying to imitate here a little bit. Now at this point the spots kind of looked, they were like popping out a bit too much from this snake. They looked a bit too much 3D for my taste, even though they weren't. So I decided to give it a little wash after I added the belly scoot. These little belly scales, they basically are a bit of a lighter like cream color, and they definitely add a little bit of a nice touch on there, even though you can hardly see them. But I think they helped. And again, I'm just using a little bit of an orange wash here, just to try and blend everything in. I'm leaving it on there, and it's a pretty intense wash. I'm leaving it on there for a little bit longer and then drying it off with the towel. It gives it this like more orangey hue. And then it's time for the normal like very diluted black wash that I like to do, just to give it some more depth. And this one I applied to both the lizard and the snake. And then the last thing I really needed to do before like any kind of varnish or anything was to clean up all the spots around the lizard's like feet and stuff that had gotten colors. Again, this guy really stuck to its crystal, which is super nice, because that's what he's supposed to. But it also meant, of course, while painting I struggled a bit. I used some matte varnishes just with my brush, and then I also like had to carefully stick back in the crystal, and with that everything was actually done. And I honestly have to say, I think they turned out so adorable. I especially love the hognose with its little smile, but I think the lizard also turned out really well. I wanted to go with like very natural darker tones, because I didn't want it to stick out like way too much and take away from the stone. With the snake crystal I was totally fine with that, since that is a bit more clear, and you know, it's way easier to like overpower that with like strong colors. But with the lizard and the like larger amethyst style stone, I wanted to just make sure that like this stone is in the focus, since it has this beautiful shape. Like they only really like smoothed out the top part and shaped it into like a crystalline shape, if they even did that, and it didn't naturally core. But the rest they really left with this crystalline structure still, and I really wanted to highlight that. And I think I really did find the right colors for both of these stones. I think both of these guys turned out absolutely adorable. Like the lizard, you know, it looks a bit more like it's hiding with its natural colors, which of course they would do in the white, so that's absolutely perfect. But I still love like all the details in the sculpture I managed to get in there, especially the little feet and, you know, how the arms and legs look and the overall shape. I think I really did pretty well with that, especially on the smaller scale. And for the hognose snake, I just think it looks absolutely adorable. I think you can definitely tell that it is supposed to be a hognose snake with its little nose, so that was great too. And I think it definitely looks so adorable how it's like snaking around the crystal. I should also mention that all the paints I used were Vallejo model paints. they're basically for miniature painting, so they don't really have like a 3D texture. They're more 2D flat and a bit more covering, and they dry a bit quicker, which is why I like to usually paint like my sculptures with those, and they adhere pretty decently well, especially if you put like a top coat on. So I wasn't too worried about, you know, scratching anything while I put the crystal back in its place for this little snake fella. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of these skulls, and let me know which like crystal you like best, and maybe which animal would go well with that. I'm quite curious about these things because I think there is so many animals that people like that would go well on crystals. I think it's a great like idea to have something, you know, to display them on, and you know, you can just make your little crystal body. As always, I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye!